Hey, let's talk about International Man of Mystery. The first Austin Powers film dropped in 1997, directed by Jay Roach, who's done both directing with the Austin Powers trilogy, Meet the Parents, and Dinner for Schmucks, but who also has extensive producer credits, most notably, in my opinion, with 50 First Dates, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and The Brink. Serving as co-producer, as well as the writer, is Mike Myers, someone who needs no explanation or introduction. However, what isn't really ever spoken about is his inspiration for the character and the story. Yes, James Bond themes and jokes are everywhere.
Hello, Austin. I'm Basil Exposition with British Intelligence.
But it actually does go a lot deeper than that. The Austin Powers character itself was originally created to serve as a persona for the band that Myers created with Matthew Sweet and Susanna Hoffs, the latter of whom you may remember was a part of the Bangles.
Walk like an Egyptian.
They called themselves Ming T as an obscure reference to The 10th Victim, an Italian film from the 60s. The band contributed songs not only to this film, but to the third film as well. The very inspiration of Austin Powers came from all of the influences Myers' dad gave to him over the years, his love for the Beatles and the Bond films, as well as the comedic influences of Dudley Moore and Peter Sellers. Funny enough, it was during the band's time together that Hoffs actually convinced Myers to write a whole story about the Powers character. What's even better, her husband at the time was Jay Roach, who she then got to produce the story once it was finished. So really it's just a fun bit of full circle trivia for you. I'm not sure there are many people on Earth who aren't familiar with at least one thing Myers has been in, or the fact that he plays both the hero and the villain in this movie. Although something not a lot of people know is the fact that Myers' original plan was to have Jim Carrey play Dr. Evil.
Jim Carrey, and Jim Carrey.
Then the unthinkable happened.
The only reason it didn't happen was because Carrey was still too busy shooting Liar Liar and he couldn't get the schedules to match up. But that aside, let's take a moment to give some real recognition for all the fantastic bit parts that were sprinkled throughout this film. Elizabeth Hurley, who went on to have roles in Gossip Girl, The Royals, and Marvel's Runaways. Michael York, who prior to this was in Logan's Run and went on to have a multitude of voice acting credits. Fabiano Udaino, one of the original cast members of One Life to Live. Mindy Sterling, who went on to be in Reno 911 and Desperate Housewives, as well as lending her voice to Captain Underpants, Chowder, Scooby-Doo, Legend of Korra, and Robot Chicken. Seth Green, who, not even listing his catalog of voice and in-person roles, would go on to create Robot Chicken, and Robert Wagner, who may or may not have killed his wife.
Allegedly.
There's also this guy named Will Ferrell who shows up for a bit, but I did some digging, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't really show up in anything past this, so I don't know.
Did that go the way you thought it was going to go? Nope.
Now, I know the last episode was pretty heavy, so I don't want to spend too long on the more serious aspect of the film, but nonetheless, it does deserve speaking about before we get to the rest of the shenanigans. The film is 98% comedy, but the 2% of the runtime that's dedicated to dealing with Austin's emotional issues and views on the world have gone largely ignored or forgotten, so it's only fair that I remind you. If you take out all of the sexual jokes and references, what we have left is a man who fights for his country and the world being thrust into a time he doesn't fully understand. He feels largely alone as all of the people he was friends with and cared about have all passed away while he was frozen. The exception is Miss Kensington, but he never actively seeks her out. Once he's told that she's retired,
You'll be working with Miss Kensington.
Mrs. Kensington.
Austin, Mrs. Kensington has long since retired.
he seems to leave well enough alone. And even when she has the chance to talk to him, she turns it down, recognizing that it's been far too long, and likely knowing that it would only serve to confuse and complicate their lives more than it already is. Austin even confirms how pent up his feelings are by saying,
Your dad loved her very much. If there was one other cat in this world that could have loved her and treated her as well as your dad, well, it was me. But unfortunately, that train has sailed.
So Austin is left with the only coping mechanisms he knows, joking and being promiscuous. But because he develops feelings for Vanessa, and she has very strong feelings about his past and current lifestyle, even that gets stripped away to a degree. Arguably, the biggest and most moving thing Austin says is when he temporarily captures Dr. Evil at the end of the film.
Isn't it ironic that the very things that you stand for free love, swinging, parties are all now in the 90s considered to be evil?
No, man, what we swingers were rebelling against is uptight squares like you, whose bag was money and world domination. We were innocent, man. If we'd known the consequences of our sexual liberation, we would have done things differently, but the spirit would have remained the same. It's freedom, baby, yeah. Freedom didn't fail. Right now, we've got freedom and responsibility. It's a very groovy time.
It really emphasizes that he not only understands the shortcomings of he and his community, but still absolutely believes in the spirit of what they were attempting to represent and fight against. He even acknowledges that in order to have the freedom that he's searching for, he has to handle the responsibilities that he's been saddled with. It's an incredible moment of character growth that, again, because this film is largely a comedy, gets largely forgotten about. Now, there are a lot of smaller, more hilarious things that I could spend the rest of this episode talking about. Like, for example, the Macarena and the Lucky Charms slogan of "They're after me, Lucky Charms" didn't come out until the early 90s, so unless Dr. Evil woke up and immediately binged pop culture, he should have no idea about those jokes. Or the fact that Tom Arnold looks like Doug Dimmadome from Fairly Odd Parents. Or the fact that instead of Chekhov's gun, we got Chekhov's pump. But instead of any of those things, just like how I compared Aldous Snow to Ebenezer Scrooge, why don't we instead have some real fun and talk about why I think Austin Powers is Captain America? Both are portrayed as icons and heroes to their people. Both go into battle wearing blue suits. Both work for government agencies that aren't really that secret. Both have partners that they have feelings for.
If there was one other cat in this world that could have loved her and treated her as well as your dad, then it was me.
Both men get frozen and thrown forward in time and have to fight the same enemy. After they wake up, they have to figure out who's alive and who's dead out of the people they used to know and be close with. They also catch up on world events and then fall for their previous love's younger, attractive relative. Both of their first films end with them stopping a bomb. And to bring it all home, since we're on the Marvel subject, you could technically consider Lucky Charms the Infinity Stones of the Austin universe, since canonically, each of the individual Lucky Charms has an ability similar to the Infinity Stones. But I'm curious, what do you think?